Throughout my time on the internet, I've come across stories that made me laugh, stories that nearly brought me to tears, and of course for today's video, stories that made me feel outright disgusted. And that's what I want to share with you today. Stories and confessions that surprisingly come from mostly Reddit. And just a warning, these stories are revolting, disgusting, and sometimes pain-inducing. And most importantly, it taps into that morbid curiosity that we all share. So without any further delay, prepare yourself for some of the most disgusting confessions and stories from Reddit. What if I told you one man turned his dark intrusive thoughts into a disturbing reality? A Redditor now infamously known as Parasite Man would make a really disturbing confession that would make you think twice before ever eating at a buffet again. This isn't a story about some gross prank. It's a story about a man who took his obsession and fetish to a whole nother level and actually got away with it. My obsession hurts others around me, it's also my fetish, but it goes far deeper than that. I'll try to explain the obsession the best I can by explaining how it started. Basically, when I was young, I caught pinworms. It was a strange feeling and the itch was painful. My parents took me to the doctor and I got medication to cure it. This event is what sparked my obsession. The thought that my body could be their whole world, their lifeline, almost a planet of sorts. It was so interesting. After that, I began researching pinworms and other parasites, and I found out the human body already hosts parasites, such as Demodex on their eyelashes, and I wanted to know how many a human body could endure without a chance of serious health issues. This curiosity has plagued my mind for years. I'm now 25, but I am very well versed in parasites, as I have been studying them for over 10 years. I also purposely infect myself with non-lethal parasites because it's part of a fetish of mine. Some have worked better than others. Quite a few have given me serious diarrhea and fevers, while others have been much more bearable. I currently have pinworms and tapeworms, various non-pathogenic protozoa, and pubic lice. I am incredibly masochistic, so although it's uncomfortable, I do feel pleasure from it. All these parasites mean I need to eat a lot more than the average person, and I still look thin. And to be quite honest, it means I can enjoy so much more food than most people. I also keep multiple cultures of bedbugs and leeches in containers, and allow them to feed on my blood sometimes. Although those kinds are really not my passion, as they do not live primarily on the human body. But I think they're interesting nonetheless, and I find them pretty cute. Now it's time for the confession. My obsession and fetish isn't just about affecting myself anymore. I also have the desire to infect others, and I have acted on those desires. Sometimes my parasites just pioneer to new lands on their own. My family have caught pinworms multiple times without my intention, and other times I purposely spread them. I have infected strangers, friends, and even my own family. I know it's bad, but I just can't stop. I think I have parasites in my brain that makes me feel like I need to spread them. I know how crazy that sounds, but if you knew the feeling, you'd understand. Maybe it's just a mental illness, or maybe its origin is parasitic in nature. I really don't know. All I know is it feels good when I do these things. I feel an intense need to spread my children, and when I do, I feel pleasure. I must have spread thousands of my children over the years. I sometimes sprinkle tapeworm eggs into people's drinks when I'm out at the clubs. I also caught pubic lice from sex with a random woman I met at the same club, and in return, I'm pretty sure I gave her pinworms, so it was a trade. The woman wasn't even attractive. I just wanted to gift her some pinworms, and instead, I basically won the jackpot by sleeping with her. I then spread my pubic lice to at least 4 other women. Sometimes I also sprinkle worm eggs onto food and buffets whenever I visit them. Yes, I understand you would think it's gross and messed up. I am basically betraying my species for my children. It's hard. I do enjoy people and I have wonderful friends and family, but I also love my parasites and my fetish is just too hard to control. I don't want to hurt anyone when I do these things, but a force beyond my understanding is driving me to do it. I think I could possibly have a parasite in my brain that has not yet been discovered. I'm sorry to all the people I have caused discomfort to, but it's a cause beyond human understanding. Although this all can be justifiable, I still feel guilt. I don't want to hurt anyone. I hope the people I spread my gifts to can find it in their hearts to be a little more open-minded and not kill my children, but learn to live with them like I have instead. I'm aware how strange and disgusting others will find me if they knew. I'm aware of how immoral this seems to most people. I assume you may see me in a negative light after reading this, but remember, I only want what's best for my children. And if you were truly in my shoes, I'm sure you would do the same. Some horror stories come from the darkest corners of the internet, and some other stories come from operating rooms. This infamous tale, known as Swamps of Dagobah, is one of those disgusting stories. Operating room nurse here. This is kind of a long one. I was taking call one night and woke up at 2 in the morning for a general surgery call. Pretty vague, but at the time, I lived in a town that had large populations of young military guys and avid meth users, so late night emergencies were common. Got to the hospital where a few more details awaited me. Perirectal abscess. For the uninitiated, this means that somewhere in the immediate vicinity of the asshole, there was a pocket of pus that needed draining. Needless to say, our entire crew was less than thrilled. I went down to the emergency room to transport the patient, and the only thing the ER nurse said as she handed me the chart was, "Have fun with this one." Amongst healthcare professionals, vague statements like that are a bad sign. My patient was a 314-pound Native American woman who barely fit on the stretcher I was transporting her on. She was rolling frantically side to side and moaning in pain, pulling at her clothes and muttering Hail Marys. I could barely get her name out of her after a few minutes of questioning, so after I confirmed her identity and what we were working on, I figured it was best just to get her to the anesthesiologist so we could knock her out and get the circuit started. She continued her theatrics the entire 10-minute ride to the operating room, nearly falling off the surgical table as we were trying to put her under anesthetic. We see patients like this a lot, though chronic drug abusers who don't handle pain well, and who have used so many drugs that even increased levels of pain medication don't touch simply because of high tolerance levels. It should be noted, tonight's surgical team was not exactly wet behind the ears. I've been working in healthcare for several years already, mostly psych and medical settings. I've watched an 88-year-old man tear a 1-inch diameter catheter balloon out of his penis while screaming, "You'll never make me talk." I've been attacked by an HIV-positive neo-Nazi. I've seen some shit. The other nurse had been in the operating room as a trauma specialist for over 10 years. The anesthesiologist had done residency at Level 1 Trauma Center, or as we call them, knife and gun clubs. The surgeon was ex-army and averaged about 8 words and 2 facial expressions a week. None of us expected what was about to happen next. We got the lady off to sleep, put her into the stirrups, and I began washing off the rectal area. It was red and inflamed. A little bit of pus was seeping through, but it was all pretty standard. Her chart had noted that she'd been injecting IV drugs through her perineum, so it was obviously an infection from dirty needles or bad drugs, but overall, it didn't seem to warrant her repeated cries of, "Oh Jesus, kill me now." The surgeon steps up with the scalpel, sinks just a tip in, and at the exact same moment, the patient had a muscle twitch in her diaphragm, and just like that, all hell broke loose. Unbeknownst to us, the infection had actually tunneled nearly a foot into her abdomen, creating a vast cavern full of pus, rotten tissue, and fecal matter that had seeped outside of her colon. This godforsaken mixture came rocketing out of that little incision like we were recreating the funeral scene from Jane Austen's Mafia. We all wear waterproof gowns, face masks, gloves, hats, the works. All of which were as helpful as rain boots against a fire hose. The bed was in the middle of the room, an easy 7 feet from the nearest wall. But by the time we were done, I was still finding bits of rotten flesh pasted against the back wall. As the surgeon continued to advance his blade, the torrent just continued. The patient kept seizing against the ventilator, not uncommon in surgery, and with every muscle contraction, she shot more of this blackish gray-brown fluid out onto the floor, until within minutes it was seeping into the other nurse's shoes. I was nearly 12 feet away, jaw dropped open within my surgical mask, watched the second nurse dry heaving and the surgeon standing on tiptoes to keep this stuff from soaking his socks any further. The smell hit them first. Oh god, I just threw open my mask. The other nurse was out. She tore off her mask and sprinted out of the room, shoulders still heaving. Then it hit me. Not able to believe the volume of fluid this woman's body contained. It was like getting a great bite of the despair and apathy that permeated this woman's life. I couldn't fucking breathe. My lungs simply refused to pull any more of that stuff in. The anesthesiologist went down next, an ex-NCAA D1 tailback, his 6'2" frame shaking as he threw open the door to the operating room suite in an attempt to get more air in, letting me glimpse the second nurse still dooring up in the sinks outside the door. Another geyser of pus splashed across the front of the surgeon. The YouTube clip of David at the dentist keeps playing in my head. Is this real life? In all operating rooms everywhere in the world, regardless of socialized or privatized, secular or religious, big or small, there is one thing the same. Somewhere there is a bottle of peppermint concentrate. Everyone in the department knows where it is, everyone knows what it is for, and everyone prays to their gods they never have to use it. In times like this, we rub it on the inside of our mask to keep the outside smells at bay long enough to finish the procedure and shower off. I sprinted to our central supply, ripping open the drawer where this vial of ambrosia was kept, and was greeted by an empty fucking box. The bottle had been emptied and not replaced. Somewhere out there was a godless bastard who had used the last of the peppermint oil and not replaced a single fucking drop of it. To this day, if I figure out who it was, I'll kill them with my bare hands. But not before cramming their head up the colon of every last meth user I can find, just so we're even. I darted back into the room with the next best thing I can find, a vial of mastisol, which is an adhesive rub we sometimes use for bandaging. It's not as good as peppermint, but considering that over 1/3 of the floor was now thoroughly coated in what could easily be mistaken for a combination of bovine afterbirth and maple syrup, we were out of options. I started rubbing as much of the mastisol as I could get on the inside of my mask, just glad to be smelling anything except whatever slimy demon spawn we just cut out of this woman. The anesthesiologist grabbed the vial next, dousing the front of his mask so he could stand next to his machines long enough to make sure this woman didn't die on the table. It wasn't until later that we realized the mastisol could give you a mild high from huffing it like this, but in retrospect, that's probably what got us through. By this time, the smell had permeated out of our OR suite and down the 40-foot hallway to the front desk, where the other nurse still sat, eyes bloodshot and watery, clenching her stomach desperately. Our suite looked like the underground river of ooze from Ghostbusters 2, except dirty. Oh, so dirty. I stepped back into the operating room suite, not wanting to leave the surgeon by himself in case he genuinely needed help. It was like one of those overly artistic representations of a zombie apocalypse you see on fan forums. Here's this one guy in blue surgical garb, standing nearly ankle deep in lumps of dead tissue, fecal matter, and several liters of syrupy infection. He was performing surgery in the swamps of Dagobah, except the swamps had just come out of this woman's ass, and there was no Yoda. He and I didn't say a word for the next 10 minutes as he scraped the insides of the abscess until all the dead tissue was out. The front of his gown, a gruesome mixture of brown and red. His eyes squinted against the stinging vapors originating directly in front of him. I finished my required paperwork as quickly as I could, helped him stuff the recently vacated opening full of gauze, taped this woman's buttocks closed to hold the dressing for as long as possible, woke her up, and immediately shipped off to the recovery ward. Until then, I'd only heard of alcohol showers. Turns out 70% isopropyl alcohol is about the only thing that can even touch a scent like that once it's soaked into your skin. It takes 4 or 5 bottles to get really clean, but it's worth it. It's probably the only scenario I can honestly endorse drinking a little of it too. As we left the locker room, the surgeon and I looked at each other, and he said the only negative sentence I heard him utter in 2.5 years of working together. That was bad. The next morning, the entire department, a fairly large room within the hospital, still smelled. The housekeepers told me later that it took them nearly an hour to suction up all the fluids and debris left behind. The operating room suite itself was closed off and quarantined for 2 more days just to let the smell finally clear out. I laugh now when I hear new recruits to healthcare talk about the worst thing they've seen. You ain't seen shit, kid. TLDR, don't shoot IV drugs into your taint. Some secrets are meant to be taken to the grave, but this one is meant to rot, or to spawn new life. When a Reddit thread asked people, what is a secret that could ruin your life? A Reddit user replied with a confession so vile and disgusting. This is the story of the cum box. Cousin died when we were both 17. There was a reception at his house just after the funeral. I went into his room and stole all the money that was there. Took some other valuables that his parents wouldn't realize were gone. No one knows that I did it. They just assumed he didn't have any money in his room. Only loose change. I don't regret it, but I will never admit I did it. Also, my cum box. Elaborate on this cum box, please. Well, it is exactly what it sounds like. It's a shoebox, or at least once was, and whenever I masturbate, I come into it. I've had it for 2 or 3 years now, I think, so it has a fair amount of cum. It smells atrocious, and I tried to burn it once. When I lit it on fire, it was too damp due to the cum that it simply sizzled and didn't manage to actually light up. Turns out burning cum smells awful, so I had to spray it with a deodorant body spray just to get the old smell of burnt cum away. It also has some drenched paper stuck to it. That's pretty much it. Because people were asking, my greatest shame. Edit 2. A lot of people were asking me why. Well, I'm apparently a rather disturbed individual. But it just kind of happened. Bought new shoes and needed some place to come. Use the box. It just escalated from there, kept using it each time, telling myself I would throw it out soon. Never did. 2 or 3 years later, I still have it. It wasn't planned or anything, it just happened. Edit 3. Fuck. This really exploded. 20,000 views of my cum box. Did not expect this. Edit 4. I often get PM'd about updates or current status of the box, generally a few a week, so I might as well update this post, if anyone even gets linked here anymore. Current status, I have created a life. Mold has begun to grow in the box and has taken over a fair amount. Smells a bit worse, mainly due to a damper apartment, so it does not dry as fast, hence the reason why the mold has begun. New picture. I will never be rid of my need for it. I hate and love the box just as much as I hate and love myself. Also, what the fuck, 2.7 million views. Never could have expected this outcome. Some NSFW stories are really disturbing, but this one really takes the cake. When Reddit users were asked what's the most messed up story you've ever heard, one user replied with this. This is the story of Maggot Nays. Friend told me this one. A long-distance couple were visiting each other for spring break, and being unprepared, the guy, let's call him Andrew, is without lube for sex. The girl, Heather, suggests he use mayo. They're both so horny, so he goes for it. While she's visiting him, they keep using mayo as lube for the sessions. When she goes back to school, she feels something tickling around her crotch. During the day, she has several orgasms. She tries to muffle them, but they are frequent and surprising. When she goes back home to look, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong. She goes to a doctor to have it looked at. The doctor takes a peek and says, "My God, you have maggots in your vagina." Turns out the mayo attracted flies, which led to squirming maggots inside her, giving her orgasms. Jesus Christ. TLDR, and I never ate mayonnaise again. Pain is relative, but some stories make every guy instinctively cringe. Reddit users were asked what's the most physical pain you've ever felt, and one reply stood out, the rusty nail story. I tore a hole in my ball sack on a rusty nail sticking out of a dock. Anyone need more info? Edit. 2 hours later, peeps wanna know. I was working at a summer camp, and we had to put the docks in the lake at the beginning of the summer. We had to carry the floating docks down and put them in place and attach them and all that good stuff. They would get a bit worn over the winter with the freeze and thaw. I was sitting on the dock with my legs in the water when we were done. I was wearing a pair of Umbro shorts, very thin material, and I decided to go for a quick swim. I put my hands on either side of my thighs and picked myself up an inch and slid forward into the water. I did not see the rusty nail sticking up between my legs and I slid over it. As I entered the water, the terrible pain from my crotch spread throughout my body. I had torn open my ball sack on a rusty nail head. As I popped up from under the water screaming, my coworkers were laughing because they thought I was screaming because the water was still cold. It did not even bleed right away. The nail had torn right down the center line of my sack. I could see my balls and the tubes inside. After a quick look, I did not look again because it made me feel lightheaded. I was bundled into the truck and we hauled ass to the hospital to get stitched up. My ball sack and nuts, after the initial swelling, were no worse for the wear. You can't really see any scar now because it was right on the center line. Some stitches and antibiotics and a tetanus shot, and I was as good as new. The pain was pretty bad, but not as bad as you would think. Weird, right? One more edit. Testicles are white and look fat covered. Some stories are too embarrassing to leave the bathroom, but this one ended up in the kitchen. Reddit users were asked, what's one secret you could never tell your parents? And one user replied with a story of the melon baller, a story of desperation, constipation, and of course, the melon baller. My mother was one of those ladies who always spent a shit ton of money on useless kitchen items that have only one specific use that she herself have never even needed. One of those items that she bought and loved dearly was a $15 Pampered Chef melon baller. Anyway, one time when I was 14, I was so constipated that I thought I was going to die. I was so embarrassed and really didn't know what the fuck was going on that I felt like I couldn't tell anyone. It was so bad. I thought my internal organs were rejecting my body and trying to flee via my asshole. I didn't shit for 3 days. Eventually, I got up the courage to try and get it out and over with because I was getting so backed up that I stopped eating. In the process of trying to deliver this shit baby, it got stuck halfway. I panicked and horse walked around my house looking for anything to help me. Then I saw it, sitting on the kitchen counter, shiny and new. So I grabbed some liquid soap, lubed up the melon baller, and shoved it up my packed backside. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. All I know, I was in pain and in panic mode. By golly, that melon baller was worth every damn penny. Scooped my shit right out and gave me an intense feeling of relief that I haven't felt since. God as my witness, my mother came home that day with watermelon and honeydew, just so she could use her new melon baller. 12 years on and I have never mentioned it, and my mother thinks that I hate all types of melons due to my refusal to ever eat her summer melon ball salad that has since become a staple. Edit 2 totally happened, and since so many of you are curious, I will go into a little detail that I omitted out of politeness before. I used the melon baller to break this shit off at the exit point. For some reason, using my hands was just not something I was ready to do. Then I used the small-ended side. It had a different sized baller at each end to shove past the exit point where it lodged itself into the shit and I pulled it out. There was no scraping involved. Pause for applause. End scene. Edit 3. Thanks for my first gold. Though I can't say I am proud of the story that earned it for me. TLDR, I never told my mother that I shoved her melon baller up my ass. And there we have it, some of the most disturbing, disgusting, and outright vile stories that Reddit has to offer. No matter how many secrets a stranger has to offer, there will never ever be a shortage of weirdness out there on the internet. If these confessions or stories left you feeling grossed out, remember, there are plenty more you've probably never even heard of, making this whole entire experience we all just sat through even more disturbing. So what did you think? What stories made your stomach turn the most? What stories made you feel the most cringe? Make sure to leave your thoughts and comments down below in the comment section, and make sure to like and subscribe. Honestly, the rusty nail story made me feel the most sick, and one of the most uncomfortable stories to read was the maggot maze. I honestly can't believe that there are stories and experiences like this people actually experienced or have thoughts like this. Anyways, this has been Keener, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe for more weird stories from the internet. I'll see you all later.